This is Word on the Reef, where marine science meets adventure. Join Tanya Murphy and Brett Goodban as we plunge into the wonders of the Great Barrier Reef and explore the mysteries beneath the waves. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Word on the Reef. I'm your host, diver and marine conservationist, Tanya Murphy. And joining me, as always, is Cairns Aquarium's marine educator and fish whisperer, Brett Goodban.
Good morning. Another week gone.
The year is flying by.
Yeah, I know, isn't it?
Now, Brett, I've got a riddle for you.
Mm-hmm. What
has no arms, no legs, and no brain, but can flash like a disco light, help control pests, and kill you in minutes?
Oh, I've seen one. Yeah, I know what it is.
I'm talking about shellfish.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, molluscs like clams and sea snails. And no, before anyone panics, I'm not describing one terrifying super clam. The traits I described each belong to different mollusk species. But if you want to know which ones can pull off each of these incredible feats, stay tuned, because today we have one shell of a show for you all.
Oh, that's sensational.
First, though, a quick reef update.
Mm-hmm.
Scientists have confirmed that this year, Western Australia's reefs suffered their worst bleaching on record after the state's longest, largest and most intense marine heatwave ever. Iconic reefs near Ningaloo near Exmouth and the Rolly Shoals off the coast of Broome and various other reefs along the coast of Western Australia have reportedly lost up to 90% of their coral this year alone. Earlier in the season, we did speak to Western Australian coral ecologist Dr. Zoe Richards, who painted a vivid and heartbreaking picture of what she was seeing in the water off WA's reefs. So if you missed that interview, you can listen back at wordonthereef.com for more information, but it takes months for them to survey all the reefs after a bleaching event, so only now are scientists starting to get a picture of the full scale of the damage of that event. Yep. Meanwhile, reports are still flooding in from South Australia, where tens of thousands of marine animals, from dolphins and sharks to octopuses and seahorses, are washing up dead on the beach.
Just heartbreaking.
Yeah. The cause? A toxic algal bloom triggered by record high ocean temperatures. We spoke to Adelaide diver and scientist Stephen Andrews about this back in May, and the first-hand stories from him were confronting. But the Great Southern Reef Foundation is working on a response, and if you want more information about that episode's also on our website, wordonthereef.com, if you'd like to hear more. But it's not just Australia. Coral reefs worldwide have experienced a 2-year-long global bleaching event fueled by human-induced climate change. It's a stark reminder that we need urgent action. No new fossil fuel projects and a rapid shift to renewable energy. I'll put some links to some climate action groups you can get involved with at wordonthereef.com. Now, if all of that has left you feeling a bit washed out, don't worry. The next part of our show will lift your spirits and hopefully make you feel as happy as a clam. That's right, molluscs. And if you think a life of sitting on the ocean floor filtering water sounds dull, think again. Once they come out of their shells, these critters can really surprise you. So joining us on the Shellophone today is Daryl Potter, manager of the Mollusc collection at the Queensland Museum, co-author of the beautiful book Shells of Queensland and the Great Barrier Reef, and a man who spent 3 decades fearlessly tracking down these armoured critters.
Wow.
Daryl, welcome to Word on the Reef.
Hello.
Hey, welcome, Daryl. Thanks for joining us, buddy.
Great to have you on the show.
Yeah.
Now, Daryl, this episode was actually inspired by a listener, Nina from Belgium, who emailed asking for a show about shellfish. So we figured it'd be shellfish not to.
That's right. Hey, Nina.
So shout out to Nina if you're listening. And if anyone else wants to suggest a topic, drop us a line at info@wordonthereef.com.
Yep.
Now, first off, shellfish isn't actually a scientific term, is it? It's more of a culinary catch-all for anything on our dinner plate that has a shell. So, Daryl, what actually defines a mollusk and what are the main types?
Well, as you said, shellfish is a term for mollusks, but it's also a term for things like crustaceans because they have a hard exoskeleton too. But molluscs in general, they have a body composed entirely of muscle with what's called a mantle, which encloses a cavity. These characteristics aren't common amongst every type of mollusk because the molluscan phylum is the second largest phylum next to the arthropoda. So ranging from snails to bivalves to things like squid and cuttlefish, you can imagine there's quite a few differences amongst the anatomy. But a lot of molluscs, but not the bivalves, they have a thing called a radula, which is a toothed tongue.
Wow.
As well. And it's
terrifying.
The look on Tanya's face is priceless.
That's right. So some of these toothed tongues, they're like a ribbon with all these tiny teeth along them, which some molluscs can use to graze algae off rocks, but other ones that have longer, more lanceolate, like sharp teeth, they might be used as in a predatory sort of fashion because they're needing to tear meat, if you like. And it's the structure of their nervous system. They don't have a central nervous system like, complex vertebrates such as mammals, birds, reptiles, etc. Yep. So it's the mantle, the presence of a radula, the nervous system. So a lot of them have a foot that they crawl on as well.
Complex and mysterious.
There are certain things that are common that you can actually pinpoint, well, this is a mollusk because of that. And it's to do with their evolutionary radiation, where you can pinpoint this back to an early sort of like an ancestral mollusk, which was a limpet-like shell made of proteins and chitin. So, yeah.
Okay, and when we think about these types of sea creatures, they seem very primordial. Are these some of the first things to evolve on Earth?
Well, they go back many millions of years, and I'm not an expert in fossil history, but molluscs go back hundreds of millions of years. So yes, and then there's been quite a number of various radiations and, if you like, experiments in body form as to which one was more successful in which sort of habitat or ecosystem.
I never knew that they had a toothed tongue, a tongue with teeth on it.
that's
never going to look at them the same way.
Yeah.
Really, I'm never going to look at them the same way. Okay, so before we dive into the secret lives of molluscs, tell us a bit about your background and how did you get into molluscs in the first place?
Well, when I was first studying biological science at QUT, I started doing some voluntary work at the Queensland Museum because I liked their focus on the different animal groups. And then I was offered a 6-month research position there, working on collecting land snails in northern New South Wales, and I was also volunteering doing the marine mollusk stuff here as well. And then I went away to the University of Queensland. I was a research assistant there in a different section, and then back in 1982 I got the job as the collection manager in the mollusk section of the museum, and I've been here ever since.
Wowza.
Wow. Older than some of the fossils.
Wow, and so you're the manager of the mollusk collection and you're also the assistant manager of the crustacean collection. Quite a CV.
Well, technically, I'm not designated that, but I do sometimes give a helping hand to the collection manager of crustacea as well, and we've helped organise the wet collection over there, and I've got a bit of a foot in both camps. So.
We were talking before about the term shellfish. It's sort of just a culinary term. So when someone has an oyster and a shrimp on their plate, they might call them both shellfish.
But shellfish, But it could be a lobster and an abalone,
It's very shellfish to them, though, isn't it?
Yes, separate phylums, which means that the crustaceans are actually more closely related to insects and spiders than they are to molluscs like oysters.
The crustacea are part of the arthropoda, which is the biggest phylum, and then the molluscs are a separate phylum. They come after that. So
today we're going to focus on molluscs, particularly those ones that have pretty shells that people might see washing up on the beach. But you've spent 30 years chasing down molluscs, both marine and land species, especially snails, through jungles, beaches and the depths of the ocean. You've even helped describe 16 new species of land snails. I think it's like you're playing mollusk Pokemon. And
Right.
like, you've got to find them all for your collection.
That's
And some of them actually do have crazy superpowers, kind of like the Pokemon as well. Isn't there a Pokemon that shoots fire or something? I actually don't know anything about
Yeah, don't look at me.
But I know mollusks don't exactly move very fast, but some of them are pretty small and camouflage. So how do you actually catch them? And what are some of your most memorable mollusk hunting adventures, Daryl?
Yes, well, whether you're on land or whether you're in the sea, mollusks, particularly, for instance, during the day, they don't want to be snapped up by some predators, so they will generally be buried underneath coral rubble or underneath rocky platforms, rocks, boulders and things on rocky platforms. If you're in the rainforest, they could be under the bark of a tree or in the leaf litter of the forest floor. And you'll find that you actually have to lift those things up to look for them and then replace them afterwards. And then sometimes you have to, for instance, some cone snails, if you're diving and you're, say, about 3 metres deep, you might pull the rock up and then you'll fan the sand and then you might find the snail. But some of these things will be more visible at night time. They'll come out at night and be foraging for food then. But then some of them also will feed during the day as well. So,
Right.
But they're always trying to find somewhere to secrete themselves, generally.
Do they primarily try and feed at night?
Well, it varies from species to species and family to family. So, some of them you will actually find them. I was diving off Hook Island in the Whitsundays many years ago, and there was a little coral bommy just off the main beach there, and it was only about 1 metre deep, and there was a giant triton shell feeding on a crown of thorn starfish in the middle of the day in front of me. So,
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So safe to say you've left no rock unturned. Literally.
That's right.
That must be where that saying comes from, because who else looks for things?
Destruction, but you have to actually, do your best to replace everything as you go. You don't want to be like one of these super trawlers that's wrecking the ocean floor around the world.
No.
Yes,
You have to try and find different ones. So if every time you turn a rock over and you're like, oh, that one again, I've already got that one in my collection. Our guest today is Daryl Potter, manager of the Mollusc collection at the Queensland Museum and co-author of the book Shells of Queensland and the Great Barrier Reef. So if you've ever seen pretty shells washing up on the beach, like snails and clams and things like that, you've probably wondered what the life was that created these amazing things. And that's what we're talking about today, specific to the Great Barrier Reef. So Daryl, roughly how many species of molluscs are known in Queensland? And after 30 years of collecting, how complete is your collection? And are there any species that you are still searching for?
Right, go for it.
Okay, well, there's a range of estimates for the number of species in Queensland, because species are always being described, and sometimes some species are being synonymised with others when they find out more information. But look, there's probably around 10,000 species in Queensland, or maybe there's more, depending on whether we're going to subdivide some of those species into other species as well. But amongst those, the gastropods, they're the largest group. When I say gastropods, they're the marine snails, and they comprise about 80%. So on the Barrier Reef, we know that there's at least 3,000 species of marine mollusk. And that's a long way from past the tip of Cape York all the way down to around Bundaberg, I think, sort of thing.
Yep.
So, but then even in places like Moreton Bay, we've got, 1,000 marine gastropod species as well. Wow. And probably a couple of hundred species of bivalves. So bivalves is a name that means two valves, right? So it's the clams, the oysters, and the scallop type shells. Yes, I should have explained earlier. An old name for marine snails or gastropods was univalve,
right,
which stems from the fact that the others, the bivalves, have two valves, which is two parts of the shell, which are joined by a hinge, and so they can open and close. Much like the old visions you used to see in movies of a mermaid sitting inside a giant clam, sort of the shell open.
Yeah, and she's wearing one of her scallop friends as a bra.
That's right. Yeah, so anything from an oyster, a mussel, a scallop, the scallop that you get at the fish and chip shop, all those sort of things are bivalves. They're actually a two-part shell, and the marine snails are a one-part shell that actually generally starts when it's really young as a small part of a shell and then coils around and twists, and then you end up with an aperture, an opening, generally in 90-something% of them on the right-hand side,
so most of them are righties and some of them are lefties.
Yeah, that's right. Most of them are what they call dextral and the others are sinistral. So dextral is the right hand. If the spire's at the top, the aperture is on the right. If the aperture was on the left, then it's a sinistral one, and they're very few and far between. But there are some species, and in fact there are a couple of families where they just have that sort of thing happening. But
are you a lefty, Brett?
Oh, no, I'm not that fancy. No, I'm righty. So, Daryl, just for our listeners, how would you sum up the importance and the role of the mollusk on our Great Barrier Reef? What role do they play?
Well, there's a lot of molluscs. For instance, if we start with the ones that are algal grazers, so the algae is important, but they're dining on the algae, scraping it off the rocks or the corals. So if they weren't there, then of course you'd get algal outbursts. And then you get other ones that are carnivores. And so the web of life, you have one thing eats another thing, and that thing eats another thing, and something's preying on that above. So the whole balance, the cycle, would be thrown out of whack if you didn't have the molluscs there. And also things like bivalves, with being filter feeders, they'll clean up the areas because they're bringing in water in one siphon that they've got and exhaling it in another. And in so doing, they're filtering the water and cleaning up. It might be a small bay, and if you take all the oysters out of that bay, then that bay all silts up and becomes very foul. So molluscs provide a whole range of what they call ecosystem services to keep things functioning really well. And it goes all the way up the line to fish that are eating molluscs and fish that are eating crustaceans and crustaceans that dine on molluscs, etc. Everything is connected.
That's exactly right. So they're the gardeners and the cleaners of the reef.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times you'll see people who own a fish tank and they'll have a snail in there because the snail keeps the glass clean. And
I used to have heaps of them in my tank.
Yeah, so I love that term, eco services. Like all the animals are performing all of these services for us for free. Yes. Thanks, guys.
It's not Jim's mowing; it's molluscs mowing.
That's right.
Yeah, and that's why we really owe everyone and the ocean to look after and protect these creatures that are working so hard for us. Well, not for us. They're doing it for their own intrinsic value, of course, but we've got to value that. I feel like I really would like to do an entire episode at some point about the oyster reefs that they have further south. It's not really a Great Barrier Reef thing, but there's oysters that build entire reefs just out of oysters, and that when they were overfished, it just completely changed those ecosystems. But I don't want to get off on a tangent about those, unless you want to add something quickly about that, Daryl.
No, just that there was a fellow I saw once. He had two little fish tanks, and one of them was the water from the bay that was all murky. And in the one right next to it, he had the murky water, but he had a whole lot of bivalves in there, oysters, etc. And the water in that one was all clean.
Wow, that's a really good demonstration.
That was just a straightforward demonstration of what is happening on a micro scale. And if you rape and pillage that sort of area, you can expect there to be,
Yeah, well, we display that
damage on a large scale.
We display that at our touch tank at work. So we've got the huge touch tank there full of all the echinoderms and sea cucumbers, sea stars, sea urchins, snails. And when people walk up, you say, you can give it a little touch if you want. And then they put their fingers in and they get a shock of their life that they're actually in water because the water's so clear. And that's when we say to them, well, there's actually no filter on this tank.
Ah.
That's the only one that doesn't have one, because all of those animals in that tank are doing it, and they go, wow, do they do that? Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
If only you could get them in your swimming pool. Keep your swimming pool filtered.
Yeah. If you had a saltwater tank, maybe, saltwater pool, chuck some sea stars in there.
Be quite a bit of salt in that.
It would be, yeah.
Yeah, they are very, very hard to keep alive, I guess. So, wow, so much interesting stuff about molluscs today. And another one that just popped into my head was when we were talking about how the gastropods have a spiral shell, and they show us that nature has this mathematical precision, because I understand a lot of them, their shell exactly matches the Fibonacci sequence. Is that something that you've ever thought about, Daryl?
Oh, wow, that's deep.
I've read a little bit about it in the past, much of which I can't remember, but I think a little bit of that is magnified as to how closely it matches the Fibonacci sequence. But you do find a lot of things like nautilus shells, etc., having a seemingly parallel relationship with other organisms in regards to the mathematical configuration of the shell and the way it spirals out and that. But I'm not an expert in the mathematical.
Me neither.
Yeah, don't look at me.
We didn't come here for geometry. We're here for biology.
Yep.
Okay, so you've said that there's about 10,000 known species of molluscs in Queensland. 80% of them are the gastropods, which is the sea snail types. And how complete is your collection after 30 years of collecting, Daryl?
Okay, well, it's not just me that's collecting. So there was a previous curator of molluscs who mainly collected land snails, and I helped him. But then there's a new curator in the last 10 years of molluscs, and so his focus is more on the marine. But as well as that, we have various specimens that have been donated to the museum over the last 100 years. And some of these have been from very dedicated marine shell collectors that paid a lot of attention. When people give us a shell, we don't just want the shell. We want to know who collected it, when they collected it, where was it collected, like locality, habitat. Was it within coral or under a rock or whatever? What depth was it at? Was it intertidal or was it at 50 metres? So we need all this data, and that's got to be entered into a database. So we've got vast collections from things like the lamprey collection, the whitehead collection, the Carless collection, and about a dozen others, where these people who have been, dedicated amateur molluscan scientists have donated these shells. And then there's a massive task, of course, in then registering these things and validating them and identifying them and then databasing them. So the collection still keeps going on, and we've got probably not enough staff to do it all justice, because everything takes a lot of time to organise the information and to put it into the database, etc. So it just keeps going on. But in the meantime, I've had a lot of fun field trips where we've collected things off Lady Musgrave Island, Lady Elliot Island.
Beautiful part of the world.
Off the reefs off Cairns as well, and then the Whitsundays and that sort of thing. So,
wow, it's a really cool job. Like, a lot of people back in the day used to collect shells as a hobby, and that's sort of frowned upon, at least in the green zones now. But for research purposes, it just sounds like a really cool job.
Yeah, some people complain about you collecting animals, etc. But a lot of the times with molluscs, you can collect shells. The animal is already passed on, and what you're doing is you've found a shell, you're identifying it, you've got the locality, you can find out, does this shell just occur here, or is it occur across to the Cook Islands or Samoa, or is it up, the eastern Pacific Ocean, or does it go across to Mauritius in the Indian Ocean? So you can actually do all this sort of investigation, and you can have distribution knowledge for the things. So molluscs are quite handy that way. You're not actually having to collect live animals, and people are very happy to collect live fish and eat them, but they get a bit frowned on if you're collecting live molluscs and crustaceans and things. But you do need to do that in order to find out, what have we got here? Is it endangered? What are the pressures on it? Is it being overfished, or is the habitat disappearing, or is the climate changing so that the reef's not doing as well?
And there's a vast difference to you going out and doing it and then Kevin going out on his boat on the Sunday and filling his bucket full of them.
Yeah, that's right. So there have been people in the past, and probably still now, that are actually over-collecting these things for food along some of the beaches, etc. And you do end up with some local effects that are not desirable because of that over-collecting.
Yep. So was there like a holy grail of a marine mollusk which you just spent your life going crazy, like, I must find the whatever type of snail because it has eluded me for too long. I'll get it one day. Was there something like that which was just like super exciting?
Like that. There wasn't like that so much as far as marine goes. In the old days, there used to be the glory of the seas cone, Conus gloriamaris, which was found to be extremely rare. But then as more deeper diving and trawling took off, they found out it wasn't so much extremely rare, that it was just in much deeper water. And once you actually had those fishing methods, the value of it amongst shell collectors became less because they worked out where the habitat was, and it wasn't an intertidal species or anything. There is a species of cowrie shell, and cowrie shells are very glossy. There is one that we got from a place called the Warrior Reef, way up in the Torres Strait, and that one was given to us by I think it was a CSIRO trawler person, and that was quite rare. It was more common north of Papua New Guinea, but the original description of that species was from south of Papua New Guinea, so that was quite a good find.
Wow, I can only imagine how excited you might have been when you found that as such a rare species. I'm going to zoom ahead to gastropods because I know you're a sea snail expert. So gastropods is the snails and slugs. So we know in the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park green zones, it's illegal to take shells or live animals. But other than being fined, there's a much more serious reason why you shouldn't pick up a pretty cone-shaped shell.
Yes.
Can you tell us about the cone snail and why it's best admired from a distance?
Okay, now cone snails are a whole range of, there's hundreds of species, and they're in one particular family called the Conidae. And what's remarkable about these species is that they, instead of the radula, which we talked about before, being like a toothed tongue, they've developed it into a harpoon-like apparatus.
Yeah.
So they can actually harpoon their prey, and their prey will either be a worm, another mollusk, or a fish. And they have a thing called a venom gland as well. So if you imagine, like in the African jungles with those poison dart guns or something or other, dipped in some sort of frog venom or something. What they're doing is they're hunting their prey in a much more sophisticated and deadly way than, say, a snail that's just grazing algae off a rock. Now, the cone snails can have different strengths of venom. So if they're eating a worm, they don't need as strong a toxin as they would if they're eating a fish. So it's more likely the ones that are eating the fish, the bigger prey, that will have the stronger poison, like the stronger toxin. Now, you won't be able to just immediately identify, well, which species of cone snail is this? So it's best that you actually don't sort of touch them at all, just in case. And there has been a case many years ago off Hayman Island where the fellow had picked up a cone snail and then it stung him on the hand, and he was rushed to the mainland and unfortunately passed away. So there is even a case for, if it's not as deadly a species, that you may have a particular sensitivity to it, such as Tanya might be allergic to bee stings, but Brett isn't or something. So one can have a reaction and the other doesn't.
That's right. Didn't we have a saying on the boats, if it looks like a cone, leave it alone?
That's right. And there is a thing called a strom shell, a particular one, Strombus luhuanus, the red mouth or pink mouth cone strom shell. And it looks very much like a cone snail, but it's got a little indentation in the outer lip where the eye stalk comes out. So I can tell the difference, but the general person in the public mightn't have any clue. So if it looks like a cone snail, just leave it alone.
So at that upper level, the most potent one, how potent are we looking?
Oh, well, the geography cone, Conus geographus, that unfortunately stung that fellow. I mean, that was it. It's very strong. So
it has to be, because if they don't kill the fish that they're targeting instantaneously, it will swim off and the snail can't move very fast. So it has to kill it instantly, not just slowly.
It anaesthetises it, sort of thing, and then while the effects are taking place, it can then draw it back in and then engulf it, sort of thing. So,
yeah, because I guess if your dinner's swimming off struggling, every shark within 5k is going to nick your dinner.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and for anyone who's thinking, I see a way around this, I'll pick it up from the rear end. No. Their spear is flexible. They can bend it around and stab you.
Yeah, that's right. People think that if I'm grabbing it by the thick end of the shell, although you think you're picking it up from the safe end, it's not safe at all, because it can bend around and it can harpoon you, and then you're in dire straits. But one interesting thing about cone snails is in recent years, in the last 10 years, they've been looking at microbiologically, looking at the compounds that make up these venoms, and they're actually using them in alleviation of pain. So even though these things can cause a lot of pain, the actual multipeptides or polypeptides that make up these compounds have been found to be useful for people with particular types of pain, and they can actually be useful to humans medically.
That's very similar to the stonefish, isn't it? I think they take the venom from that, take the compounds out and use it for anti-rejection drugs in heart transplant patients as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely fascinating.
It's incredible.
Everyone thinks sharks are the big danger on the reef, but really it's this beautiful little snail that's so pretty that everyone wants to pick it up. But for everyone out there, don't be afraid. You can still come and snorkel on the Great Barrier Reef. The cone snail's not going to jump up and grab you while you're snorkeling. Just don't pick up any seashells and we'll all be
Don't touch
safe.
And leave bubbles behind only.
Yeah, take nothing but photographs and leave nothing but bubbles.
Yeah.
So another fascinating snail is the giant triton, which you mentioned before. They grow up to 2 feet long, and I think those are the ones which a lot of coastal indigenous cultures used to use to blow into it to make a horn sound. But what can you tell us about the life of the triton, and what do they eat and how do they hunt, Daryl?
Well, the giant triton shell will eat echinoderms, which is basically your things like starfish and sea urchins, etc. But on the Barrier Reef, one of their desirable prey is the crown of thorn starfish. That's why, it's a good idea to protect these sort of things, because we were talking earlier about balance of things in the sea and ecosystem management. So the crown of thorn starfish can even detect the scent of a triton in the water, and they'll flee in a panicked manner.
Oh, wow.
I've seen videos of this on YouTube. The scientists, they had a crown of thorns starfish in a tank, and as soon as they added the scent of triton, and the crown of thorns sea star was climbing over itself to try and get out of the tank. It was just terrified. And for any listeners who aren't aware, the crown of thorns starfish is a coral-eating pest.
Yes.
So that's why it's so important that we have the triton there among all the other species which eat the crown of thorns starfish, right?
Yeah, and the giant triton has this huge muscular foot, so it can easily grab and hold on to this prey and then just start chomping away at it.
Wow. Who would have known that sea snails are so terrifying?
And that's despite it's eating something that's really, I don't know if you've seen them, the crown of thorn starfish, you probably have.
They're so spiny.
Have quite sharp spines, and they have venomous toxins as well.
I've been a victim to that venom before.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, it's not pretty. No, I don't recommend it.
But yeah, they are an amazing shell. And traditional people across parts of the West Pacific, up even as far as Japan, I think, have often used these shells as a messaging device by drilling a hole in it and you blow it like a trumpet, which I occasionally do at displays that we have. And the sound carries quite a long way. So.
Wow, that's amazing. So did you say you can play the Triton shell trumpet?
Yeah, it's only one note,
so cool.
I don't expect a Beatles medley. Or something, so.
You might win an aria, the snail aria.
You can do a whole hour of music with one for us one day on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as you only need one note.
Just one note will do.
It'd probably have to be rap, I'd say.
So when you blow into it, do all the mermaids come rally to your side for...
Oh, well, I wish. No. And you don't actually blow. If you've ever done a trumpet or a tuba, you have to go like that sort of thing.
Oh, a bit like a yiggy didgeridoo.
Yes. Yeah. Wow, that's circular breathing. That's a whole new... You've got to breathe in through your nose, hold all the air in your cheeks and then blow out. So.
And it's called the Triton shell because King Triton is Ariel's dad, the king of the sea, from Greek mythology.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Who would have known there are so many stories, like, biological and cultural to do with shells? I feel like you're just another person we're going to have to get back on the show, Daryl, because we've only got 8 minutes left. But we've talked about cone snails. We've talked about the giant triton. I actually want to add in about the drupella snail because we talked about one coral-eating pest, which is the crown of thorns starfish. But a lot of people don't realise there's actually a sea snail which eats coral and is blowing out into plague proportions, which is called the drupella snail. Do you know much about those, Daryl?
Yeah, there's things like Drupella cornus and a few other species, but they are small, much smaller snails, and their diet is eating the coral as well. But the damage that they do in comparison to what climate change and human destruction is causing on the reef is much less. So I think they're allied to the groups like murex snails that have a wide variety of colour, forms and shapes on the reef as well.
Okay, well, jumping around a bit because we did promise we were going to talk about the disco clam, which is leaving the class of gastropods. Among the bivalves, there is this beautiful creature which, when I was diving on the ribbon reefs, I came across one of these, what I call a disco clam, affectionately, and it was truly lit with what looked like blue lightning flashing inside its mouth. What's going on there?
Well, it's a marvellous phenomenon because it does look like that it's bioluminescing, that it's flashing lights at you. Yep. This thing is called Tonoides ales, and it's a member of the family Limidae, which are called the file clams, so named because the outside sculpture is like a file sort of thing. But anyhow, these things, they have what called little nanospheres that are made of silica, and these silica nanospheres are highly reflective. So what's actually happening, remember we talked about what is a mollusk and they have a mantle, they're exposing the edge of their mantle and then quickly unexposing it or taking it back in. So it's going out, in, and as it's going out, this highly reflective silica nanosphere covering...
So it's basically like a disco ball. It doesn't generate its own light, but the light bounces off it.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's highly reflective and it's just flashing at you. You think that the light is emanating from there, but the light is reflecting from there. So the last few nights, the moon has been extremely bright here, and you'd think that it's actually shining at you, but it's just reflecting the light of the sun, and that's what this, sometimes called an electric flame scallop, is doing to you.
Wow, it's just so cool to see, though.
Illusion, but it has a purpose. So there's some suggestions that is a predator deterrence mechanism.
One of my favourite things to film, if I saw one of them up in the Coral Sea, you could hear me underwater with my excitement. I'd just sit there for ages watching it and filming it. They're just beautiful, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
So it's deterring predators, but it's attracting curious divers.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's a theory that it's deterring predators anyhow, but it would have some function. They wouldn't just evolve this all on their own and just, oh, here I am, very pretty sort of thing. So there's always a function. There's a method for survival that is always connected to these sort of things.
No doubt. Well, we're
searching for a food or a mate or something, you know.
Well, that'll remain a mystery until we can talk to the clams and they can tell us why they're doing that. But until now, they will be a mystery. Let's have one last question about conservation. What are the biggest threats to marine molluscs today and what needs to be done to protect them?
Well, obviously pollution is a threat. Obviously climate change. We're getting a whole range of different climatic events that are happening around the world. They've always happened before, but the frequency is becoming more frequent. By the way, I'm not expounding a Queensland government point of view. This is just my point of view sort of thing.
Yeah.
So pollution, climate change, the more we fragment habitats and destroy habitats, and that's what humans do. They create new areas to live or to have new factories, and we need those things, but a lot of it has to be done with a certain amount of conscience and planning, and that's why we have environmental management arms of a lot of engineering firms, you know. So.
Yes, and with regards to having a decorative shell inside your house, is it ever okay to collect or buy shells?
Well, the shells that you'll find in a lot of shops, they look great, but they're so perfect, some of them, that you can obviously tell they've been
Killed.
Harvested alive. So they're just harvesting them and then selling them for $2 or $5 or whatever they are.
It's just awful.
So it's not a good idea to promote that sort of thing. But
there's lots of other things you can decorate your bathroom with, folks.
Yeah. I mean, I've got some in my bathroom, but they were actually dead shells, you know. There's nothing wrong with a shell on the beach, as long as it's not in a protected zone, is calcium carbonate, and it's just going to basically erode. So,
well, as long as you're not within the Great Barrier Reef highly protected zones, folks. Yes. All right. Well, we've got less than a minute till the 11 o'clock news. So Daryl Potter, manager of the Mollusc collection at the Queensland Museum, author of the book Shells of Queensland and the Great Barrier Reef. Thanks for all your amazing work shedding some light on these mysterious animals, and thanks for joining us on the show today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Daryl. It's been great, mate. Thank you.
Yes,
Bye.
and thanks to all our listeners for joining us on the show. We'll see you back here next week on Word on the Reef. Have a great week.
Have a great week. Bye.
Best fishes.